do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indie Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indie Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indies Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indies Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indie Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And, of course, 1430 a.m. if you're in the Indianapolis area. Now, Colts training camp, it's going on, and everyone's excited about Anthony Richardson. And not everybody. I need to stop saying that because I do think there's about half of the Colts fan base that is on the Daniel Jones train. Daniel Jones is coming. He's going to revive his career. You know, he's a former number 6 overall pick. Who cares that he was terrible in New York for 5 of the 6 years that he was there? Who cares that he got benched for Tommy DeVito? Who cares? Revival. Daniel Jones' career. It's happening in Indianapolis. I do think that part of the Colts fan base is on that train. And I'm sure there's some not as emphatic as I was right there that just think that Daniel Jones is going to come in, complete the 5-yard out routes, and that'll make them happy for a few weeks. And this time of year, July it's so funny to me because July is the month of talking yourself into things. It's the month of big time PR. Like, this is when we get Luka Doncic is getting in shape. Watch out. He was literally on the cover of a magazine. This is the time of the year where we get training camp highlights of Anthony Richardson completing a couple passes. And everyone's like, this is the year. This is the time of the year where Ben Simmons sends out his training videos. We're like, hey, watch out. Ben Simmons can shoot now. And we just never learn. This is the time of the year where everyone talks themselves into their favorite team, their favorite player, whatever it is, year in and year out. This is what happens. Like, it happens every year. Colts fans, you started off saying, we're going to be pretty bad. You know, we don't really have a quarterback. And, you know, like, we're probably going to win like 6 games. And that's okay because we can draft Arch Manning if we only win 6 games, maybe. And then training camp started. Or no, OTAs, the draft happened. And like, JT Tuimoloau, like, pretty good at Ohio State. Tyler Warren's really going to help whoever plays quarterback. Maybe we win like 8 games. And then OTAs happened, and now training camp videos are coming out. And now some of you, not all of you, some of you are like, Anthony Richardson, he's the guy. We're winning 11 games. We're going to win the division, and things are going to be great. You just slowly talk yourself into this Colts team is going to be good. And it's not just you. That is every fan base. There's some poor Cleveland Browns fan talking himself into Dylan Gabriel or Shadur Sanders or Joe Flacco. And then the season's going to start, and that poor Browns fan is going to be so sad. And some Colts fans are currently telling me about Daniel Jones. And they're talking themselves into Daniel Jones. You know, Daniel Jones completed 67% of his passes not that long ago. Maybe he shows up. Maybe he just runs the offense. Can he be Gardner Minshew? Because, you know, that year with Gardner Minshew was just so wonderful when they went 9-8 and didn't make the playoffs. So there's this slow kind of grind of talking yourselves into these different things. I love Ridger in our YouTube chat. If the Colts win 11 games, I'll get an NFL back tattoo. I'm going to hold you to that, Ridger, because you're right. There's no way this Colts team is winning 11 games. But there's just kind of this slow process. And right now, the people talking themselves into Anthony Richardson, they're buying into all of the highlight videos that we're seeing on X and different social media sites. All the people talking themselves into Daniel Jones are just going to Pro Football Reference and looking at that completion percentage number. That's what's happening right now. And I've been pretty vocal that, you know, I don't think completion percentage is the best way to measure who's good at quarterback and who's not, because it really just reflects your style of play. Guys that tend to complete more passes or play the game way safer than guys who tend to complete less of them. Okay, so I don't think it's the best statistic to look at. And I just know what's coming next. I'm trying to get out ahead of it. And I just know someone is going to tell me how Daniel Jones has won a playoff game. Jonathan, he beat Kirk Cousins in a playoff game. He might be the guy. I think that's the next thing that's coming. And I think one of the best lines in response to, oh, he's won a playoff game is what Dan Dockett said, which you can listen to him right here on the station from noon to 3, when he said, Tim Tebow's won a playoff game. That's a great response. And so I was thinking last night, how many playoff games do you have to win for it to like really mean something? You know, like, because like if someone looks at me and says, Jonathan, Daniel Jones has won a playoff game, I say, great. So as Tim Tebow and Trevor Lawrence and Case Keenum and Kirk Cousins and, of course, Daniel Jones. So how many would it take for me to be like, hey, you know what, you're right. If you can't, me said, Jonathan, this guy's won 2 playoff games. Probably sit back and be like, yeah. So was Alex Smith and Jeff Garcia. You know, but then again, if it's a young guy, you know, Jane Daniels has won 2 playoff games. CJ Stroud has won 2 playoff games. Baker Mayfield has won 2 playoff games. You know, like that's kind of the extent of the list. If you came to me and said, Jonathan, well, this guy's won 3 playoff games. I still don't think I'd fully buy in because, like, Cam Newton won 3 playoff games. Dan Fouts won 3 playoff games. Bernie Kosar won 3 playoff games. By the way, Lamar Jackson has only won 3 playoff games. I know we love him, but so far he's like James Harden. It's all about the regular season for Lamar, baby. Randall Cunningham, good player. He won 3 playoff games. And then, you know, as I'm kind of working through, so I'm like 4. That's the number. Like once you get to 4, that's probably when you start to see guys and you're like, yeah, absolutely. That guy is a legitimately good quarterback. And then I read through the list. Jimmy Garoppolo, he's won 4 playoff games. And immediately I was like, nope, this isn't the start of the list where you start to see consistently good to great quarterback play. But don't get me wrong, like there's some good players on here. Like Johnny Unitas won 4 playoff games. But then there's other guys, like I said, Jimmy G, Mark Sanchez won 4 playoff games. Brock Purdy has won 4 playoff games. Quarterbacks with 5 playoff wins. Maybe this is it. Joe Burrow, nice. Steve McNair, good player. Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers. But Trent Dilfer has won 5 playoff games as a starting quarterback. So, 6. That's the number. 6 playoff wins. Jalen Hurts, Phil Simms, Bob Grease, Frank Tarkenton. And then you get to 7, and it's Josh Allen and Ken Stabler. And then everything past that point is nothing but historically great quarterbacks. So if you have 5 wins in the playoffs, then chances are you're probably a good quarterback. 6 wins, you're definitely a good quarterback. Anything past that, 7 and up, you're a great quarterback. And I bring all of this up because even the quarterbacks who have revived their careers, the Geno Smiths, the Sam Darnolds, the Baker Mayfields, can I see those guys winning 5 playoff games? Let me just ask you, like do you think, because the argument for Daniel Jones that he comes here and he revives his career and he looks like Sam Darnold or Geno Smith or Baker Mayfield. You think Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, or Baker Mayfield are going to win 5 or 6 playoff games in their careers? Baker Mayfield might. He's won 2. But the other 2? Absolutely not. Like, I really like Geno Smith. I thought Sam Darnold was good last year. Do I think either one of those guys are going to win 5 or 6 or 7 playoff games in their careers? No, I don't. And that's really what you're looking for when you're looking for a quarterback who is a guy who can win me playoff games. I'm going to talk about Justin Herbert later on in the show. And look, like, people love that dude because he's put up crazy numbers. You know what that guy hasn't done? Won a playoff game in 6 years as a starting NFL quarterback. And ultimately, like that is the thing that matters. The Colts need a quarterback who can go under center in the middle of January when it's cold and you're on the road and you're playing in Buffalo and you look across the sideline and you see Josh Allen standing over there. You need a guy on your sideline who you feel like gives you a chance. And even if Daniel Jones figures it out this year and he comes out and he finally throws for 3,500 yards, which isn't that many, and he finally throws 20 touchdown passes for only the second time in his career, and he does it with a touchdown to interception ratio of 2-1. Even if he does that, no, he's not winning 5 playoff games. Anthony Richardson might, though. And that is why he needs to be, I think that's why everyone wants him to be the starting quarterback, because the talent is undeniable. And if he can dial it back and he can be a little more consistent, you know that you have a guy on your team who is every bit as talented, not as good as, every bit as talented as the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomeses and the Lamar Jacksons of the world. That is why there's a desire for him to be the starter. And if he can continue to play, as well as everyone is saying that he has so far during training camp, then it's possible. It is. It's possible for him to maybe win like 6 playoff games in his career. And I think that if we got 6 playoff wins out of Anthony Richardson, given the struggle that there has been to find a good starting quarterback here in Indy, I think people would be very happy with that. And he is playing well right now. It's not all a facade. Colts offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter was asked about Anthony Richardson and the improvements that he made over the course of the offseason.
Yeah, you can see the work that he's put in the offseason. Anthony's diligent about his offseason work habits, and he's, when you've been in the league a few years, you start figuring out areas to work on over your offseason, whether you're a quarterback working on different types of passes or different types of footwork, receivers catching different balls, running different routes. That's an important part of being a professional and playing at a really high level, because when these guys sort of leave us, they're on their own. They can work on whatever they want to work on. Sometimes they show back up and they're playing a little bit better. They're executing a little bit better. You can see that Anthony's sort of off-season work is paying off. He's got to keep going. We got to keep working on it. We got to keep pushing to get better. But we're always encouraged when a guy goes out and puts work in and shows up and plays a little bit better because of it.
Jim Bob Cooter, Colts offensive coordinator right there, talking about Anthony Richardson and the improvements that they have seen from Anthony Richardson from last season to this season over the course of only one offseason. Now, the physical improvements for Anthony Richardson, they're great. They're important. He needs to be more accurate. But the off-the-field preparation and toughness is very important as well, because that is another thing that he has lacked. Okay? Knowing what to say at press conferences for him is important, as we learned last year. And he did 8 minutes yesterday with the media, and he kind of sounded like a starting quarterback in the NFL. Here I go, doing exactly what I said all of you were doing, slowly buying into the Indianapolis Colts. He had 2 answers that I thought really kind of stuck out, but just kind of the demeanor through the whole thing. He wasn't super smiley, just pretty straightforward. Just looked a lot better than it did last year. So here is Anthony Richardson talking about how he always needs to be doing more than everyone else.
Not necessarily. Honestly, I just feel like the things I was doing, last year and the year before, I feel like there was more. All the greats, they always do more. They do more than what other people are expecting them to do. And, after last season, I feel like I needed to do more, not only for the team, but for myself. If I want to so-called be great and I want to be in the Hall of Fame one day, I have to do more. I have to go do things that other people won't do. So I've just been doing that, just taking it day by day, not necessarily trying to, change anything mentally or anything like that, but just taking a deeper dive and studying my playbook a little longer, asking more questions, going through my footwork, walking through the plays by myself, just stuff like that, just trying to do more.
Trying to do more. That's what Anthony Richardson says he's trying to do. I love the part where he says, I have to do the things other people won't do. And he talks about how, he needs to work on his footwork, and now he's going through the plays by himself. Now he's studying his playbook a little bit longer. He's doing it more. And look, he could be lying, but if he is, I'm glad he is. He didn't know how to do that last year at the podium when he said he tapped out because he was tired. He might finally be getting it. He might finally understand what it really takes to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. After 2 years of the Colts trying to beat it into him, he might finally get it. I hope he does because he's super talented. Whether you like the guy or not, you cannot deny that talent oozes out of that dude. So maybe he gets it. Maybe he does. Like I said, I still want to see more. I want to see what he looks like in a preseason game. So he might finally get it. It's good that he seems to understand that he needs to do more. Do I like that he mentioned making the Hall of Fame? Not really. I would have preferred him to have said something like, win a Super Bowl or whatever. Like, I would much rather have heard that. But that being said, I'm just glad the dude has like real goals and something beyond. I want to get to that second contract. He never said that, obviously, but you know what I mean. Okay. I'm glad that he's actually like setting his eyes on something a little bit more than just barely being the starting quarterback for a bad football team. The other thing that I like that he said is how he is seeking correction from his teammates. That is such an important thing. Here he is talking about, the importance of getting better and kind of how he's gone about doing that.
I can say yeah, but there's also room for improvement when it comes to that. I feel like I can be more of a leader sometimes. I can talk more. I can be verbal a little bit more. I can just communicate with the guys more and just see where their head is and see what they need me to improve on. I was talking to the O-line afterwards today. They told me sometimes my cadence is a little low, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's never personal. Anything that's going to help the team, you got to be able to take that and just apply it to your game. So. Just communicating with the guys and being more verbal, I feel like I can do that, but I think I'll take a step in leadership.
Anthony Richardson right there talking about taking a step in leadership, which is really important. I like hearing that he asked his offensive line how he could help them and what he could do better. Like when I played baseball in college, the freshmen that figured things out quickly were the ones who would go to the seniors who were hitting really well and say, "Hey man, like what are you doing, to get your hands around on that fastball, or what are you doing to be able to stay back on that breaking ball?" It's not an exactly apples to apples comparison, but the guys who seek correction are the guys who tend to figure it out a little bit quicker. So I'm glad that Anthony Richardson is apparently looking to do more. I'm glad that he's going to his offensive line, trying to get better. These are the things that we wanted to see from him last year, right? And 2 years ago. It's taken him 2 years, but he might have finally figured it out. And if he has, then that's a good thing. And it'll give him a real shot to not only be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts this year, but to maybe stick around a little bit longer. So we'll see. I'm hopeful. I hope you are as well. Zach Pereles is going to join the show when we come back here in about 3 minutes to kind of bounce around the NFL a little bit, talk about some of these other training camps. He was at Commanders camp. He's going to Baltimore camp. He's going to be there for the Colts and Ravens joint practice. So very excited to have him on when we come back here in about 3 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. You can check us out on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. Head over there and subscribe and watch the show there. Hop in the chat to be part of the conversation. You can also watch on X _ Jonathan Smith to follow me there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And once you listen to the show, you need to head over to CBSSports.com, search up Zach Pereles, and just go read all of his stuff because he does a great job covering the NFL. He joins me now. Zach, what's going on, man? How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing really well. Obviously, this is a great time to be covering the NFL. You want to overreact to every single training camp rep, and you want to make huge declarations of whether this guy's going to be a breakout superstar or he's going to miss the team completely. So great time to be analyzing the NFL.
It is. It's PR season. Like the Lakers are putting Luka Doncic on the cover of Men's Health, and everyone's like, healthy Luka is here. And then, you got like here in Indy, every Anthony Richardson rep that goes well is posted somewhere. And people are like, maybe this is the year. So I think you're exactly right. We just overreact to everything in July. And I want to start with an article that you wrote 6 days ago on the Lions. I thought it was really good. You just kind of highlighted how different the team's going to be. New offensive coordinator, new offensive line pieces, new defensive coordinator. Which of those kind of pieces that they're losing, whether it's the offensive line or the coordinators, which do you think is going to be the bigger adjustment for them to kind of fix?
Yeah, I think offensive coordinator is number one there. It's just, you can have the same plays. You can have pretty much the same guys, although a couple offensive linemen are changing. You've got to know when to call those plays and how to implement all the plays that you have. Jared Goff is a guy who we see him at times and we say, look at, the intermediate arm strength and the ability to stand in the pocket and take a hit. And he really improved under pressure last year. But he is a guy who needs very specific surroundings around him to be at his best. And when you take out one of those pieces like a Ben Johnson, who was generally considered up there in terms of play design, play calling, all of the things that you want in an offensive coordinator, that is a little bit worrisome. I think that obviously, and then you mentioned you're having to implement that with a new center and a new guard. So I really think that replacing Ben Johnson is a big, big deal. Now, John Morton obviously has history with the Lions and has, is a well-respected guy. Dan Campbell has spoken really highly of him, but he's not the same guy. And there might be some growing pains there, even with a ton of talent all over that offense.
I would like to think that since, Jared Goff's going into year 10, which is a really weird thought, I'd like to think that he could take some of the offensive load, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to the line of scrimmage, they're calling like 3 different plays. And I'd like to think that Goff can kind of help manage that. I'm more concerned about the new defensive coordinator who's never been a defensive coordinator before. What do you kind of expect from their defense this year?
Yeah, so the biggest thing will be health. It was going back and researching for this piece. They had 20-something players on IR to end the season. And I think I wrote in the piece, a healthy Aiden Hutchinson can be an entire defense by himself. He had 7.5 sacks last year through 4.5 games or so. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's maybe even a bigger jump for Kelvin Shepherd. I do think that what I came away with overall on this piece is that when they're healthy, this team still has a ton of talent, and that includes a defense that still should be really good. I'll be really interested to see how Shepherd calls this defense. Aaron Glenn last year did a terrific job, but at some point he had lost so many players that he was like, all right, we're just going to keep sending pressure, keep blitzing, and we're going to hope that enough blitzes get the job done well enough that we can kind of survive on the back end when they were literally playing guys who had just come in off the street. So, I think that I wonder if it'll be a little bit less aggressive. You obviously have to be less aggressive too if you have Aiden Hutchinson being a dominant pass rusher. You don't have to send so many blitzes. But yeah, it'll be a big jump for Kelvin Shepherd. They have some young guys who they really need to see take a jump, like Terrion Arnold had a really up and down last year. But I think maybe a little bit less aggressive could actually help them, just because they'll have better players and you don't have to send so many bells and whistles at the opposing quarterback.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com, where he writes and covers the NFL. Wrote a really good piece about 6 days ago on the Lions. If you want all the details on that, just go and check it out over at CBSSports.com. Zach, you also wrote yesterday about the Colts left tackle, Bernard Raymond, getting a 4-year, $100 million extension. What'd you think about that deal?
Yeah, I love it. I think that when you can lock up good players, ascending players, you should do it. I understand Bernard Raymond's a little bit of an older guy, but he is still very much ascending. Just when you look at his football career as a whole, I think he's really become a good player. He's athletic. He's gotten more consistent, I think. And, left tackle is almost one of those positions where you don't want to know the guy's name, because usually when you hear it, it's because he's doing something wrong. But Bernard Raymond is a good ascending player. You're going to want a good left tackle, no matter what type of offense, but especially what the Colts are doing and where they are in their quarterback development right now. So, yeah, really smart deal. Obviously, when you reach the 9-digit number in a contract, it's an eye-opener. But get these guys on your team for the long run. I usually try to pay more attention to the guaranteed money, which I believe was more around $60 million.
60,
so,
yep.
Yeah. So I think it's a good deal, a smart deal. Keep the guys who you have ascended with and reward them. Reward them a year early. I think he's a good player. He's going to continue to get better.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com, who wrote about Bernard Raymond's extension. I completely agree. And I think we give Chris Ballard a lot of flack here in Indy. Like when you don't make the playoffs 4 straight years and you never really make a decision at quarterback until you absolutely have to, and then you draft Anthony Richardson, who hasn't been very good, like you're going to come under some fire. I will say the fact that he got Bernard Raymond in the 3rd round is incredible to me, because I think left tackles are a lot like quarterbacks in the NFL. The really good ones get drafted in the 1st round. I think that is one of the more underappreciated things about Ballard, being able to find a guy like this in the 3rd round. And now the left side of the Colts offensive line should be really good. The right side, though, not super confident in. What do you kind of think about the Colts offensive line as a whole after losing Ryan Kelly and Will Fries this last offseason?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of moving pieces there, and especially like that center to quarterback relationship is so important. And now you've got Tanner Bortolini there. I think that he will be fine. That right guard spot is obviously one where you're not quite as sure, but I think that it's a passable offensive line, and I still really do believe in Shane Steichen's ability to get the most out of guys. I know that it's been a little up and down, a little dicey, and certainly in Indianapolis, not exactly the most popular guy the past couple of years, but I still do really believe in his offensive system at the end of the day. And so I think it's going to come down so much to, I think, Anthony Richardson. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like that's the way the quarterback battle is headed.
Zach, I have no idea. I'll just be really honest. All the clips from Richardson look really good. Here's the thing. Like, if Richardson can make the easy stuff look easy, then the job will undoubtedly be his. The question is whether or not he can do that, because that's been kind of the question the entire time. That being said, based off of everything that you hear out of training camp, it seems like Richardson's playing really well, and he's playing better than Daniel Jones. With that being said, and I don't want to be the guy that like crushes the media. The media here in Indy does not care about Daniel Jones at all. At least the guys that are there. So we'll kind of see. I'm kind of waiting, just kind of on my opinion. Like, I want to see what they look like in joint practices, and I know that you're going to be there August 5th for the Ravens and the Colts joint practice going on up there in Baltimore. But that's kind of what I'm waiting on before I kind of say which way they're leaning. Because when you're playing the same defense and the same players every day, it's a little bit easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I will say joint practices, like you said, coaches feel the exact same way, even more than they do about the games themselves. When you're really trying to just get, through a couple drives injury free, you're not really installing a ton of stuff. Those joint practices are really important because you're getting a lot of reps against opponents that you haven't seen, but also opponents that haven't seen your stuff day after day for weeks. So I think that'll be really important. The Ravens do such a good job. I'm really excited to go see the Ravens today. That's a tough defense. They can give you a ton of different looks, a ton of different versatile guys. So yeah, that's going to be a really important day for Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. But I'll also warn, like, while joint practices are the most important part of, training camp in the preseason, there are times where joint practices look like a mess for one team, or one team looks awesome, and it doesn't turn out to be nearly as bad or as good one way or the other. Last year, I remember the Commanders had a joint practice with the Ravens, and it was not always the prettiest. And then we obviously know what the Commanders did. So just take a deep breath with everything in the preseason. It's still early. Different coaches are installing different amount of things. Some guys want to get everything in. Some guys want to say, we don't want to show anything, or we don't want to show too much. So just always take a deep breath. What you want to see is individual good plays, good reps. If the thing as a whole isn't the best, it's not always a death sentence.
Joined by Zach Pereles at CBSSports.com, where he writes and covers the NFL. Talking a little bit about the Colts and training camp and the quarterback battle. Like you said, you're headed up to Ravens camp today. What are you kind of hoping to see while you're there? Because this is the team that I think everyone knows and understands that the roster's awesome and they are more than talented enough to win the Super Bowl this year. What are you hoping to see?
Yeah, I'll be focusing, I think, on a couple of rookies in Malachi Starks and Mike Green. When you look at the Ravens last year, their pass defense was pretty awful for the first half of the year. Then they moved Kyle Hamilton around, and it got a whole lot better. Now with Malachi Starks there, you can move Kyle Hamilton wherever you want again. And then Mike Green, who a lot of guys had as a top 15, top 20 talent in the draft, slid because of significant off-field concerns to the back of the second round where the Ravens nabbed him. So those are a couple of guys. The Ravens can use a really good pass rusher, and they could use a safety that helps them unleash Kyle Hamilton again. So those two guys, it's always interesting. We look at first-round rookies and even second and third-round rookies and assume that they will be able to contribute from day one. But the Ravens don't need these guys to just contribute. They need them to contribute at a Super Bowl level. That's the goal there. So I think it's going to be a really fun day. This is my first time seeing the Ravens. I'll be back a couple more times, and like you mentioned, for the joint practice as well. So those two rookies is really what I'll have my eye on. And then I'm a human being. I'm going to watch Lamar Jackson.
Oh, that would be so hard for me. Like, I couldn't imagine. Once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking a little NFL training camp. Like, I couldn't imagine being given this assignment of like, hey, we want you to go to Baltimore and we want you to write a piece on the Ravens defense and how Malachi Starks is going to kind of help the Ravens do more with Kyle Hamilton. Zach, I don't think I'd be able to do it because you just know that you just know that Lamar Jackson is the kind of guy that, like, he makes you watch him,
100%. And luckily, I think I got a little bit of experience last week with Jaden Daniels in Washington because it's so hard obviously we're trained to watch the ball and the quarterback gets the ball every play, but sometimes I just said, hey, let's focus on the offensive line. Hey, let's focus on where the defenders are moving in coverage. And then at the last second, you snap your attention back to the quarterback. It's easier said than done.
So, as you said, like, you were at Commanders camp. I think it's fair to say they overachieved. They overachieved a little bit last year, getting all the way to the NFC Championship game. I don't think that'll happen again this year, but what'd you think of the Commanders after, being there for a couple of days?
Yeah, the biggest thing that stood out to me is the defensive depth is so much more improved. In the preseason, you're always, even if you're not formally projecting it, you're always thinking in your head, what's the 53-man roster going to be, and who are they going to keep here, and how many are they going to keep here? And last year, it kind of felt like the cuts weren't easy, but it was like, hey, there's a significant drop off after a couple of guys, and you're guessing who can step up and take that spot. This year, it feels like, especially at cornerback and on the defensive line, it's more like, hey, where is the drop off? And is this group of guys who are above that drop off, who's going to distinguish themselves? Is there one guy who's, good enough to play and be on a 53-man roster, but not going to make this one? I think that's what stood out to me the most. The defensive line is just so much better and so much more versatile. We talk a lot about depth, but I think versatile depth is really important. They brought in a lot of big guys. Javon Kinlaw has the biggest arms I've ever seen on a human being. He is just an incredible athlete, physical specimen, because they were really bad against the run last year. But the other thing is, late in games, the reason that the Commanders won so many late games is because of Jaden Daniels and a really good offense. The reason they played so many, close late games is because the defense couldn't get stops. So I do think that they've kind of tried to add a ton of different types of defensive linemen. They're going to be able to send in, 3 guys who tip the scales at over 300 pounds, or they might, play a couple of defensive tackles and a bunch of pass rushers. So I do think that they've done a really good job improving that defense. And then the other thing that you notice, especially because he actually arrived, is that Terry McLaurin is not on the field, but he is in the building.
Yeah. Last thing for you before I let you go, Zach. Any word on how that contract negotiation is going?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I think that reporting for training camp, and obviously for those who don't know, Terry McLaurin's on the physically unable to perform with an ankle injury. It is an ankle injury that Dan Quinn said he picked up at the end of last season, but I think a new contract would make that ankle feel a whole lot better if you understand where I'm coming from there. No real updates there. Terry's been really, quiet about it, but the fact that he's there, you can take it as a good sign, but, and it is a good thing that he's there and he's around the guys, but also Terry McLaurin is smart. His representation is smart. This issue can't be swept under the rug when he is literally there and signing autographs for 30 minutes after practice. He is quite literally showing the Commanders his value and what they're missing out on by being there. So is it an olive branch? Maybe. Is it a strategic move by Terry McLaurin? Maybe. He's also saving a whole lot of money by holding in. So yeah, not a whole lot of updates other than he's there, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Okay. Yeah. Holding in is the way to go. Cause like you said, you don't get fined, cause those fines are pretty hefty. We saw Trey Henderson was like, you know what? No, I'm going to hang out in Florida. And then he missed, I think like a week. And then he was like, let me go back. Let me show up and quit having to pay all these fines. Zach, thanks for your time, man. Stay safe in Baltimore. Looking forward to having you on next week after the Colts and Ravens do their joint practice. Thanks for your time, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That is Zach Pereles. Go read all of his stuff over at CBSSports.com. As I said, he does a great job covering the NFL. Once again, he'll be at Colts and Ravens joint practice to kind of report on everything going on there. When we come back here in about 4 minutes. I like when Jim Bob Cooter does press conferences because he actually says things. You know, if you ask Shane Steichen a question, he doesn't really say much. Jim Bob Cooter, he'll give you an answer. He was asked about Tyler Warren yesterday, and he talked a little bit about the versatility and how they're going to use him. I'm pretty excited about it. I think you should be as well. I've got that audio for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Dan Dockage at noon. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy's Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. You can listen to the Dan Dockage Show there as well from noon to 3. And you can also listen on 1430 a.m. if you're in the Indianapolis area. Colts camp in full swing. Jim Bob Cooter was doing a press conference yesterday, Colts offensive coordinator, and he was asked by friend of the program, Kent Sterling, about Tyler Warren, who was seen taking handoffs yesterday with running backs. So he was asked about the versatility and if it's normal for rookie tight ends to work on more than just playing tight end. And here's what Jim Bob Cooter had to say.
It is a little more unusual. The tight end position is pretty mentally taxing. We ask a lot of our tight ends. Tyler is uniquely talented to handle a lot of that. Now, we're putting a lot on his plate, and sometimes you push them a little bit beyond their threshold to try to ask a little bit more and more and more each day of them. He's done a really nice job studying his role each day, being able to go out there and execute. I think he's going to be a very versatile piece for us. We're going to try a bunch of different stuff with him, give him a bunch of shots at a bunch of different aspects of playing offensive football. I think he's going to do a bunch of it really, really well. But it's a learning stretch right now. Nice hot training camp day in pads. You make a few mistakes along the way. We clean them up and we go. We're excited about his future.
That is Jim Bob Cooter, Colts offensive coordinator right there, talking about Tyler Warren and how they're lining him up in all these different places and how they're excited. And, there was a report that he took handoffs from quarterbacks yesterday. So they split up to do their position-specific drills. And he went with running backs to work on receiving handoffs from Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. That is not normal. That's pretty abnormal. Brock Bowers was awesome last year, right? He was. With that being said, don't think he played any running back for the Raiders. Don't think he took any sort of handoffs or anything like that. And this is part of why you go get Tyler Warren, because he can do multiple things for your offense. He can put his hand in the dirt and he can block. He can put his hand in the dirt and go run routes. He can line up at wide receiver and go run routes. He can line up at receiver and crack block for you. He can do all sorts of things. If you go back and you look at what he did at Penn State, he took snaps at quarterback because the dude played quarterback when he was in high school. And he took snaps at running back. And he took snaps at wide receiver. And, of course, he took snaps at tight end. He even took snaps at center. That's my favorite play from him all year last year. They're playing USC, and he's lined up at the tight end spot, but he's got the football. And, the rest of the offensive line is to his right. And he snaps the football, and then he just runs a go. And he's matched up on a safety from USC, and he, Drew Aller throws a not great football, and Tyler Warren's like, that's fine. I'm Tyler Warren. And he jumps over the USC defender, and he hauls it in for a touchdown. It is an incredible play. And his ability to line up in multiple positions, Jim Bob Cooter there made it sound like that he's just a smart guy who just knows and understands football. I think having played quarterback a little bit in high school, I think helps guys with that, because obviously when you play quarterback, you have to know what everyone is doing. And then, obviously he gets to Penn State, and James Franklin and his staff there are really good at what they do. Okay, so I think he's going to have a big year because he can just do multiple things. And I think every time he gets the football, there is a little bit just extra excitement around him and what he can do with the ball in his hands. So, I'm not very excited about the Colts season because I don't think that they're going to be very good. But I am excited to see how Shane Steichen and the rest of his offensive staff go about using, Tyler Warren, who is a guy who's very versatile, as we are coming to learn pretty quickly here at Colts camp after he took handoffs yesterday with running backs. I haven't talked about the Fever in a while, and I feel obligated to do so because they are still a story, even though Caitlin Clark's not playing right now and all that kind of stuff. People are still going to games. People are still watching. Not as many people, but still. People are paying attention to them. And the Fever are 5-2 in their last 7 games, which is kind of that's good. And Caitlin Clark she didn't play. She only played in 3 of those 7 games. And yeah, they're playing kind of well right now. 2 of those 7 wins came against legitimate playoff teams. 4 of the 5 wins were by double digits. The one win that, one of the 5 wins in the last 7, wasn't by double digits, and they won that one by 8. It's a talented roster. Like, they've got good players. Kelsey Mitchell can really score it. Lee Boston's having a pretty good year. The role players haven't been as good as what everyone kind of thought that they were going to be. Like, Sophie Cunningham's been a little underwhelming. Lexi Hull has only been okay, but they're good. And like there's a reason why they still have the fourth best odds to win the WNBA finals this season. Like there's a reason for it. And if Caitlin Clark can come back and she can be productive, not like she can be, a potential, she can play on the level of an MVP candidate, then like this team is going to be really, really good once again. And they're going to have a chance to win a first round playoff series. And they're probably going to be, not a top, 4 seed or whatever. And, the 8, not the Aces, but the Lynx or the Liberty, whoever, they're going to look up and be like, geez, like we have to play the Fever in the first round and Caitlin Clark's healthy. Oof. Like, how are we going to, that's not a fun draw. So if Caitlin Clark comes back healthy and she can play well and she can shoot the ball a little bit better, better than 28% from 3, then this Fever team could still make a deep playoff run. They just have to stay in the race. And I bring that up because tonight they're playing another decent team in the Phoenix Mercury. Win tonight, improved to 6-2 in your last 8. And it's hard not to like where this Indiana Fever team is headed, right? Because right now they're sitting 6th in the standings. They're playing a Mercury team tonight who's 3rd at 16-9. Okay, I believe the game's at home. I got to double check that. The game is at home, and it's at 7:00. If you can go. The Fever are only 3.5-point dogs without Caitlin Clark. We still don't know when she's going to come back tonight. That's why you can buy a ticket for as cheap as $10. So I'm just, I'm not going to sit here and do 20 minutes on the Fever when Caitlin Clark isn't playing, but they're good enough. They are noteworthy enough without her to still be talked about for 4 or 5 minutes here and there. Once again, they're playing tonight. If they can just keep it moving, they can keep it rolling, and they can make the playoffs, and Caitlin Clark can get healthy, and she can heal up that groin, and she can come back and be better than what she has been, then watch out. This is a Fever team that before the season, everyone knew and understood how talented they were. Stephanie White was supposed to be, a coach that kind of helped them out a little bit. And we'll see. I'm, just very intrigued by them, right? Not saying that they're going to win the WNBA finals, but I'm smart enough to know that Vegas is really smart. And there's a reason why they have the 4th highest odds to win the WNBA finals, despite the struggles that they've had so far throughout this season. So we'll be keeping an eye on the Fever as the season continues. When we come back at 11:00, we got more stuff on the Indianapolis Colts, the quarterback situation. I couldn't figure out a good title for this segment that I'm going to do, but I basically made a list last night of the players in the NFL that I have my eye on for one reason or another. Maybe it's time for them to perform. Maybe whatever team they're on made a move for them to, be featured a little bit more often if they're not a quarterback. So I've got 7 quarterbacks and 3 receivers that I think are going to be very important this year and are going to help dictate which teams are really good, which teams are average, and which teams are bad. I'll tell you who those players are when we come back at 11:00.
Let's do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. Head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can, of course, listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app as well, which you can download wherever you find your apps. I was bored last night, as what happens pretty much every night. And I was just thinking about the NFL and some of the really important players that probably aren't being discussed enough for one reason or another, right? And it's a lot of, here in Indy, it's a lot of Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. And, like if one of them figures it out, then the Colts could be pretty good this year. And if neither one of them figures it out, then the Colts could be pretty bad this year, right? That's just the very simple reality of it. And so I was thinking last night, like who in the NFL deserves our attention from their play is going to greatly impact the way that the NFL season goes. And I do think that Anthony Richardson / Daniel Jones, whoever wins the starting Colts job, starting quarterback job for the Colts, is on this list. And as of right now, Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, it's like a bad car wreck. Like you just can't really take your eyes off it. I wish you would, because when you look at the car wreck, you slow down and it backs up traffic. So if you're driving, don't do that. It's really annoying. Anyway, when it comes to Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, it's probably the worst quarterback battle ever. Worst quarterback competition we've seen in the history of the NFL. And I don't think that that's hyperbolic. And neither one of them have been really good at all throughout their entire careers in the NFL. And I do think that whoever wins this quarterback battle is going to be watched out of a lot of curiosity. Like if it's Daniel Jones, can he have a Sam Darnold or Geno Smith-like resurgence here in Indianapolis? Can Anthony Richardson finally figure it out? Translation, neither one of them have ever been good in the NFL. And it could go pretty badly no matter who wins the competition. But if one of them is really good, then all of a sudden maybe the Colts have a chance to steal the final wild card spot. Maybe the Texans collapse and they have a bunch of guys get hurt. Then maybe they can win this division. Who knows? But I do think that the winner of this quarterback competition is going to have a pretty decent impact on kind of how the NFL turns out this season. I think Justin Herbert belongs on this list. Okay, playing quarterback for the Chargers is like being the CEO of Reebok. It's an important business. It makes a lot of money, but it's smaller than Nike and Under Armour and Adidas and New Balance and Puma. And because of that, if you're the CEO of Reebok, no one thinks about you. No one thinks about the starting quarterback of the Los Angeles Chargers. No one thinks about Justin Herbert or any of the other Charger quarterbacks. Like I think Drew Brees benefited greatly, not only because he went to New Orleans or was traded to New Orleans and won a Super Bowl. He was also traded to New Orleans, a place that loves and cares deeply about football. Los Angeles just isn't like that, and the Chargers are second fiddle to the Rams in LA. No one thinks about Justin Herbert until the middle of the year when you turn on ESPN or FS1 or whatever, and someone stares into the camera and says, do you know who's playing really well right now? Justin Herbert. We need to give him his flowers. That's how it goes every year. And then if he makes the playoffs, he plays terribly. For example, he lets Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars complete a 27-point comeback in the 2023 NFL playoffs. Last year against the Houston Texans in the first round, after throwing 3 interceptions the entire regular season, he, in the wild card round against the Texans, he decided to throw not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 interceptions against Houston. And then we forget how bad he was in the playoffs. And then the cycle repeats. And then here in a couple weeks, people are going to start doing top 10 NFL quarterback lists. And Justin Herbert is going to be on there. And I'm going to be at home and I'm going to see it. I'm going to be like, why in the world is Justin Herbert on there when we've seen him completely and utterly melt in the playoffs, not once, but twice? That cycle can't repeat anymore. He's going into year 6. Okay, it is time for him to win a playoff game. When you're 6 years into your career as a starting quarterback, and guys like Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins have more playoff wins than you do, it's time for you to start winning playoff games, especially when people tell me how great you are. So Justin Herbert, can he show up and play well in the playoffs? That is going to have a big impact on this NFL season, and he needs to be paid attention to from week 1 through week 18, not just randomly in the middle of the season when we're tired of talking about Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. Caleb Williams is a guy on this list as well, and I think everyone is going to pay a lot of attention to him because he's Caleb Williams and he's the starting quarterback in the 3rd largest market in the NFL, Chicago. And I was thinking about him last night, and if I forked out a bunch of money for my kid to score 1,500 on the SAT, right? Because you can take like specialized classes that'll kind of teach you how to take the test, right? And like, let's say that I'm some big academic and I want my kid to go to Harvard because you need around a 1,500 on your SAT if you want to do that. And if I sent my kid off to take the SAT for the first time and he scored an 1150, I think I would respond in a way of like, you know what? It was his first time taking the test. I would find a way to rationalize it. And I think that's what the Bears are doing right now. They are rationalizing what was a slightly above average rookie season from Caleb Williams. He got sacked way too much, but he did complete 63% of his passes. He did throw for 3,500 yards. He did throw 20 touchdown passes and only 6 interceptions. So there was some good. Like, if his name wasn't Caleb Williams, then I think people would have walked away from it. Like, you know what? The offensive line wasn't good. Matt Eberflus was his head coach. You know, he did pretty okay considering the circumstances. But because he's Caleb Williams and because he was the number 1 overall pick and because he's a little strange with the nail painting and stuff, people are like, oh, he was terrible. Also doesn't help that Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix were both really good. But if you had to kind of keep this analogy of the SAT going, he scored an 1150 on the SAT last year with a bad offensive line and a bad coaching staff. Those 2 things have been fixed. He's going to these SAT classes now. He's got, a completely revamped offensive line, especially at center, left guard, and right guard. He's got a new head coach that is offensively supposed to be great. No more excuses. He can't have another season that is equivalent to scoring an 1150 on the SAT. Okay, to kind of keep this analogy going a little bit more here. So if your kid was to make an 1150 on the SAT after pouring all these things into him, and he came back a second time and he took the SAT again, and this time he made like a 1,300, you'd probably send him back a third time thinking that he could maybe, just maybe, hit that 1,500 mark and get accepted into Harvard. I'm not saying that Caleb Williams needs to have the equivalent of a 1,500 on the SAT this year in terms of his NFL season. I think that's too high of a bar. Okay, but he needs to show real improvement given all of the resources that the Chicago Bears have put into everything around him. A new offensive line, a new head coach, a lot of really good weapons. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. They drafted Luther Burden out of Missouri. They drafted a tight end with the 10th pick in the NFL draft after already having a pretty good tight end in Cole Kmet. The Bears have done everything necessary to make sure that Caleb Williams can succeed this year. And if he doesn't, then eventually the problem is him. So I'm not saying that Caleb Williams needs to have an MVP caliber season, but he definitely needs to show real improvement. Throw for 4,000 yards. Okay, keep that touchdown to interception ratio at 3-1. Just throw more than 20 touchdown passes. Go better than 5-12. So that is what I want to see from Caleb Williams this year. And if he does that, and if he figures it out a little bit, and the Bears go 10-7, 11-6 in a really good NFC, then that is going to greatly impact how the playoffs turn out in or on that side of the NFL. The next guy I've got here on the list is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold finally showed us last year why he was the 3rd overall pick. The question is if he's going to be Billy Ray Cyrus or the Beatles. Billy Ray Cyrus was a one-hit wonder. He wrote one good song and was famous forever because of it. The Beatles are one of the best bands ever. They wrote nothing but good hits, and they had a real career in music. Is Sam Darnold going to have a real career as a starting quarterback in the NFL, or are we going to look back at that Vikings team and say, hey, look, he had the best receiver in football. The second receiver was really good. TJ Hawkinson is a really good tight end. Kevin O'Connell's a really good head coach. The offensive line was good as well. And because of that, he had a one-off season where he was really good. And because of it, he got paid by Seattle. I don't know. I don't think that he's going to be very good this year just because Seattle doesn't have the proper supporting cast. But we'll see. He's a guy who needs to be noted because if he's good, then the Seahawks are probably going to be good because that defense is real. So Sam Darnold, another guy to keep your eye on in terms of a guy who could potentially really impact how the NFL season goes. I think Brock Purdy belongs on this list as well. Brock Purdy got paid in the offseason, $53 million a year. That's what his contract's at now. And I'm really split on Brock Purdy. Like, have you ever had a coworker who got a raise and you didn't really know how to feel about it? You know, part of you like really likes the guy because he works hard. He like started in the mailroom and he worked his way up. And, you know, it's like part of you is like, I like that about this guy. But another part of you is like, is he good enough at his job to deserve this? And that's kind of how I feel about Brock Purdy. And I think a lot of people are split on him, which is uncommon with these guys who make $53 million a year. Like when the Dolphins paid Tua $53 million a year, everyone was like, whoa. We like Tua, but $53 million. When the Chiefs decided to give Patrick Mahomes $50 million a year when he signed his original big extension, everyone was like, yeah, that makes sense. It's very rare that people are split on a guy who makes this kind of money in the NFL. I'm leaning towards it not working more than I am it working because last year a lot of guys got hurt and Purdy wasn't good enough to elevate the offense. So we'll see. But if he's good and if the 49ers are right, then, you know, the 49ers could win 12 games and win the NFC West. And all of a sudden everyone's like, should we have been thinking about the 49ers and instead of the Rams and all that kind of stuff. So I think Brock Purdy is very much worthy of note this season in terms of impacting how the NFL season goes. Jordan Love needs to be on this list here as well because the Packers have a lot of really good players, but not a lot of great players. And you can win a lot of games that way if your quarterback's great. And Jordan Love, 2 years in a row now, the first 8 games of the year has not been very good. And then the final 9 games of the year, he's been awesome. And so if he can, you know, take those final 9 games and play like that, all 17, then the Packers are going to be more than good enough to win that division and probably make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is also on this list, the former Packers quarterback now in Pittsburgh. And Aaron Rodgers reminds me, or 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers reminds me of my first car, a 1999 Toyota RAV4 that had 190,000 miles on it. When I bought it, the car was older than I was. After about 6 months of having that Toyota, every time I had to start the car, every time I hit a bump, it was like a little nerve-wracking. You know, it's like, is today the day that the car's not going to start? Is today the day I'm going to break down in the middle of the road? You know, like some of my buddies had really nice cars and they would like race in parking lots. Yeah, I wasn't doing that in this 1999 Toyota RAV4. I was never going to win a drag race in that car. And I kind of view Aaron Rodgers the exact same way this year. He's old, kind of waiting on the wheels to fall off. Every time he gets hit, I know there's going to be a part of me that's like, is he going to get up right now? I don't think that he's going to win you a shootout. Like if, you know, the Steelers are playing games in the 40s, like they're probably going to lose by a lot. So can he just get the Steelers from point A to point B? If he can do that, then the Steelers will probably win like 10 or 11 games and, you know, and then lose in the wild card round because that's just kind of what they do under Mike Tomlin. And you'd think, look, they won 10 games with Russell Wilson last year. Certainly they can win 10 or 11 with Aaron Rodgers this year. So those are the 7 quarterbacks that I've got my eye on, or I guess 8 because I said Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, but those are the 7 quarterback situations, let's call it that I have my eye on that I think could really impact this upcoming NFL season. The other 3 guys that I have on this list are receivers whose teams have purposefully made moves because they believe in them. So Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be the best receiver in Seattle this year. The Seahawks got rid of DK Metcalf in part because they didn't want to pay him, but also in part to create more room for Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had a really good year last year. And this happens all the time in sports. We see teams move off of older, more expensive players for younger, cheaper players that have shown some promise. Like the Colts did that this year, right? They moved off Ryan Kelly for Tanner Bortolini. They moved off Will Fries, who was going to be really expensive, for Matt Gonsalves, right? Like they saw something that makes them think, you know what? We don't need those 2 older guys anymore. Let's bring in these younger guys. And the Seahawks are doing the exact same thing, just at wide receiver with Jackson Smith and Jigba taking some of those DK Metcalf snaps. Okay, the Rams, same thing. Puka Nacua has been the best wide receiver in LA since he showed up. Cooper Kupp was obviously the receiver everyone paid attention to because he was a Super Bowl MVP as a wide receiver, which is really impressive. But Nacua has been the guy, and he's finally going to be the guy that everyone pays attention to in LA. Devontae Adams is probably going to get some of that shine, but Puka Nacua is the guy. And look, I'm not good at fantasy football. Part of it's because I don't like or care about fantasy football. But if you can draft Puka Nacua this year, I would absolutely do it. Last guy here on the list is another wide receiver, and this one's a little bit different. I talked about Brock Purdy earlier, right, and how his play is really going to dictate the NFC West and all those things. Juwan Jennings' play as well is really going to dictate the NFC West. 3rd and 1 in San Francisco is alive and well because Deebo Samuel is gone. He's playing for the Commanders. Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL in the middle of the season last year. He's going to miss some time recovering from that. So, Juwan Jennings, congratulations. You're getting all the early targets this year. You're getting all of them. And this is a guy who I believe is either in the final year or coming to the end of his contract. And he's going to have a real opportunity to put up some big numbers early. And we know that Brock Purdy likes throwing it to him because 3rd and 1 isn't something that I made up. That has been a thing ever since Brock Purdy took over as the starting quarterback. He just kind of tends to find this guy on every 3rd and 8. It's really impressive. So Juwan Jennings, another guy to kind of watch out for there as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, how many playoff games does a quarterback have to win to be legit? Because I know that there are some Daniel Jones fans out there telling their buddies how Daniel Jones has won a playoff game. It's really not that big of a deal. I'm going to tell you how many playoff games a quarterback needs to win to be considered legit when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. It's a beautiful month of July. Thank you for tuning into the show, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. Go head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith to follow me and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. And it's July. Coming to the end of it. But July is just, it's hype month. Like, there's not a ton going on in the world of sports. So when we're not talking about and complaining about the WNBA and the players of the WNBA, we have to like create hype for different things, you know? Every training camp video for every team in the NFL like matters. Not really, but it kind of does, because people see Anthony Richardson completing passes and they're like, oh, watch out for Anthony Richardson. He's kind of figuring it out. Watch out. Scary hours loading, so some people may say. The Lakers had to go get Luka Doncic on the cover of a magazine about health and fitness. And now everyone's like, oh, skinny Luka, bet him to win MVP. You know, it's just that this is the time of year that we're in. And I do think that the Colts fan base is pretty split on Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones being the starter. The people who want Anthony Richardson, I get it. You know, you like the idea of the potential, and if he figures it out, then maybe, just maybe, the Colts can have a starting quarterback in their backfield for the next 10 years. Okay, so that makes sense. And all the people who want Daniel Jones, I understand that as well. You just want a guy who can complete a 4-yard out route. I get it. It makes sense. And because we're in the hype season, every Anthony Richardson completion in training camp is the biggest deal to all of the Anthony Richardson people. And because no one posts highlights of Daniel Jones, the Daniel Jones supporters, they can't lean on that. So what do? They go to the Pro Football Reference page, and they look at that completion percentage. They say, hey, Jonathan, look, he completed 67% of his passes in this season or whatever. And I'm like, that's cool. And because the hype train won't stop until games start, I already know what's coming next, Daniel Jones fans. And look, I don't like either guy. I think both of them are terrible. And I just know that there's some Daniel Jones fan out there right now talking to his buddy at work saying, you know, he has won a playoff game. Let's forget that it was against Kirk Cousins, but hey, he did win a playoff game. And like, that doesn't mean anything, you know? Like, there's a lot of guys who have won one playoff game. Tim Tebow, Trevor Lawrence, Case Keenum, Kirk Cousins, and so on. And so I was thinking last night, like, how many playoff wins does a guy have to have for me to be like, yeah, like, that's noteworthy. He's probably going to be pretty good. And like, age and those things matter. Like, if you were to tell me that Daniel Jones had 2 playoff wins, like, I don't think I'd really be moved by that either. But you say, hey, Jonathan, Jane Daniels has 2 playoff wins. Like, that obviously means a little bit more. By the way, notable quarterbacks with 2 playoff wins includes Jaden Daniels, C.J. Stroud, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Alex Smith, Billy Kilmer, and Jeff Garcia. So, you know, like, there's some not so great quarterbacks in there. Like solid, I guess, but nothing outstanding. And then you go to quarterbacks with 3 playoff wins. You say, hey, Jonathan, this guy has 3 playoff wins as a quarterback. Doesn't move me. 3 does a little bit. You got Cam Newton in here, Dan Fouts, Bernie Kosar, Lamar Jackson, Randall Cunningham. So, yeah, it means a little bit. And as I was working through this, I got to 4 wins. I'm like, I think this is going to be the number. And then I read through it. And it's like Jimmy G has 4 playoff wins. He's a career backup. Johnny Unitas, 4 career playoff wins. That's good. Nick Foles, though, and he's back up. Mark Sanchez fell off a cliff. Brock Purdy, still not sold. 5 almost was the number, because then you get to quarterbacks with 5 playoff wins. And this list is pretty nice. Joe Burrow, Steve McNair, Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers, and Trent Dilfer. He's the exception on that list. And then you get to 6. And this is where I feel pretty comfortable saying, like, if you win 6 playoff games as a starter, then chances are you're pretty good. Jalen Hurts, Phil Simms, Bob Grease, Frank Tarkenton, and then 7 and up, you get Josh Allen and Ken Stabler at 7. And then obviously after that is your Dan Marinos and your John Elways and your Tom Brady's and your Patrick Mahomes. So I think 5 is where I feel pretty good about you. If you're at 6, then I know for a fact that you're a good quarterback. Above that number, 7 and up, there's a decent chance that you are a legitimately great quarterback. And in this context of playoff wins, I just raised a pretty simple question. Does Daniel Jones have 4 more playoff wins in him? Like, can you see a scenario where Daniel Jones goes on to win 4 more playoff games? I don't think so. And I think we'd know it by now, considering that he's going into his 7th year of NFL football. And you say, well, Jonathan, yeah, like, of course you feel that way because the first 6 years he was bad. If he comes here and he revives his career like Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold have done, then how would you feel then? I think the exact same way. Because even these quarterbacks that have revived their careers in new places, like, I can't see those guys winning 5 playoff games. Like, do you really think Sam Darnold is going to retire having won 5 playoff games, even after watching that outstanding year in Minnesota? I don't think so. Like, do you think Geno Smith is going to retire with 5 or 6 career playoff wins? No, I don't think so. Maybe Baker Mayfield could do it. Maybe. But we'll see. Even that one, I'm not like totally sold on. And so when I look at Daniel Jones, it's like, yeah, I don't think that guy's winning 4 more playoff games in his career, let alone, 3 playoff games in a single season or in a single playoff run. Because that's right. You need wild card, I guess 4 wild card, division, conference championship, and then Super Bowl. Like, he's not doing that. He's not. Anthony Richardson might, though. He might. He's more than talented enough to do it. And that matters because, believe it or not, the best quarterbacks in the NFL are the ones who have everything. They're really talented and they're really smart. Like Mahomes, crazy talent. Josh Allen, crazy talent. Lamar Jackson, crazy talent. Joe Burrow, crazy talent. You just kind of keep working through it. And then you look at Anthony Richardson and it's like, yeah, things haven't come together, but that dude's pretty talented and things might be coming together during this training camp. It's possible. He's apparently playing really well. And Jim Bob Cooter highlighted some of these improvements that we've seen from Anthony Richardson so far during training camp. Here is Colts offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter talking about Richardson and how he can see the improvements that Anthony Richardson made over the course of the offseason.
Yeah, you can see the work that he's put in the offseason. Anthony's diligent about his offseason work habits, and he's, when you've been in the league a few years, you start figuring out areas to work on over your offseason, whether you're a quarterback working on different types of passes or different types of footwork, receivers catching different balls, running different routes. That's an important part of being a professional and playing at a really high level, because when these guys sort of leave us, they're on their own. They can work on whatever they want to work on. Sometimes they show back up and they're playing a little bit better. They're executing a little bit better. You can see that Anthony's sort of off-season work is paying off. He's got to keep going. We got to keep working on it. We got to keep pushing to get better. But we're always encouraged when a guy goes out and puts work in and shows up and plays a little bit better because of it.
Anthony Richardson went out and he put in the work and he's playing a little bit better because of it. That's what Jim Bob Cooter is saying right there. And that's good. That's a very encouraging thing. The physical improvements for Anthony Richardson are great and they're important. But the off-the-field preparation and toughness is every bit as important as well. And that is something that he hasn't done a very good job of, tapping out, not playing hurt. If you're hurt, you have to play. Like the number of times that, watching quarterback, I don't know if you watched this season or not, it's Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, and Joe Burrow. The number of times I heard Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins say, if I'm hurt, I'm playing, it was a lot. And it's like, does the guy here, Anthony Richardson, does he understand that? And look, we're not going to know that until games start and until he gets hit and popped in the mouth and all that kind of stuff. And my thing is, like, Anthony, like, if you're not going to play hurt, then slide every time you run, just to kind of keep from getting hurt. That way you can play a little bit more. But while the physical improvements for Richardson are good, it's the mental side and the toughness side that I really want to know about. And part of that is knowing what to say at press conferences. Like, that's important. Knowing not to give sound bites. And yesterday, Anthony Richardson did about 8 minutes with the media here in Indy. And it's the first time I've listened to him and thought, this guy sounds like a starting quarterback. This guy sounds like a dude who should be playing quarterback in the NFL. I'm not going to play the whole 8 minutes for you, but I will play two answers to me that really jumped out. And the first one is right here when he talks about the importance of doing more.
Not necessarily. Honestly, I just feel like the things I was doing, last year and the year before, I feel like there was more. All the greats, they always do more. They do more than what other people are expecting them to do. And, after last season, I feel like I needed to do more, not only for the team, but for myself. If I want to so-called be great and I want to be in the Hall of Fame one day, I have to do more. I have to go do things that other people won't do. So I've just been doing that, just taking it day by day, not necessarily trying to, change anything mentally or anything like that, but just taking a deeper dive and studying my playbook a little longer, asking more questions, going through my footwork, walking through the plays by myself, just stuff like that, just trying to do more.
Anthony Richardson right there talking about the importance of him doing more. Good. It only took 3 years. It only took 3 years for him to get this, but better late than never. Seems like there's an understanding that he needs to do more if he wants to be great and if he wants to win games and win Super Bowls and do all those things. Okay, he said verbatim in there, I have to do things other people won't do. Right, and then he talks more about how he needs to do more. And that's really what I think we've been asking of him ever since he got here. Don't do the bare minimum. Show up early. Study your playbook a little bit longer. Okay, put in the extra work. Go out early and walk through the plays like he's been doing in this training camp. Okay? And look, it's one answer in a press conference after a training camp day. It's really not much, but it does seem like things might be going in the right direction for him. It seems like he might have finally figured this out at least a little bit. So maybe he finally gets it. Maybe. I'm not saying he does. I'm not saying he doesn't. But that's a good answer that points towards him kind of maturing a little bit, which is something that needed to happen. This other answer popped out as well when he was asked about leadership and things he could do to kind of be better in that area.
I can say yeah, but there's also room for improvement when it comes to that. I feel like I can be more of a leader sometimes. I can talk more. I can be verbal a little bit more. I can just communicate with the guys more and just see where their head is and see what they need me to improve on. I was talking to the O-line afterwards today. They told me sometimes my cadence is a little low, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's never personal. Anything that's going to help the team, you got to be able to take that and just apply it to your game. So just communicating with the guys and being more verbal, I feel like I can do that, but I think I'll take a step in leadership.
Anthony Richardson right there talking about taking a step in leadership. And my favorite part of that answer is him going to the offensive line and saying, hey, like, what am I doing wrong? Like how can I help you guys? And they look at him and they're like, hey, man, like your cadence is too low. And that is such an important thing. It is, because quarterbacks can not only be elevated, but quarterbacks can elevate other players as well. And cadence and all those things are really important. But I just appreciate his willingness to go to his teammates and say, hey, man, like what can I do to help y'all? And it's just when I heard that answer, it just kind of made me think about like when I was in college. Like you could tell really quickly on the baseball team that I played on, you could tell really quickly which freshmen were going to be good and figure it out and which ones weren't. And it was usually the ones who would go to older players who were playing really well or had a history of playing really well. And they just go to them and be like, hey, man, like what are you doing to be able to get your hands around to that fastball? What are you doing to be able to stay back and hit that breaking ball? Like, you have to be willing to go to your teammates and say, hey, like what am I doing wrong? What can I do to help you? And hearing Daniel Jones go to his offensive line and do that is nice. Like, that's an important thing. So, look, once again, it's one press conference in July. That's all that it is. And I don't want to make this a bigger deal than what it is. But it's kind of encouraging that Anthony Richardson answered questions like a starting quarterback in the NFL. It really was. I listened to Daniel Jones's press conference as well, and he sounded like a quarterback going into his 7th year. He didn't say anything noteworthy. Look, he's dealt with the Giants media, all those people in New York. He's gonna be fine. Like he'll handle the Indianapolis media just fine. So he didn't say anything super crazy. So I don't feel like there's really a need for me to elaborate or run through any of it. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, Tyler Warren, he was asked about yesterday. Shout out to Kent Sterling asking Jim Bob Cooter a really good question about Tyler Warren and how they're going to use him and some of his, ability to be pretty versatile. So I'm going to play that audio for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. Everyone head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indies Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And you can also listen on 1430 AM if you're driving around the great city of Indianapolis. And look, I'll just be honest. Like I've been pretty negative about this Colts team because I don't think that they're going to be very good. With that being said, there are some things to be positive about. I talked about Javarius Ward yesterday and how his presence in the secondary should help the Colts not give up big days to receivers like they did time and time again last season. And today, I want to talk a little bit about Tyler Warren. You know, the guy who the Colts spent their first-round pick on. You know, everyone in Indianapolis has just been yelling and screaming for a tight end. We need a tight end. And, you know, all that good stuff. And the Colts went out. And they drafted one in Tyler Warren that people expect to be pretty good pretty quickly. And one of the things that I liked about Tyler Warren is how at Penn State, they just did whatever was necessary to get him the football. And Tyler Warren was just like, all right, I'll take handoffs. I'll line up at receiver. I'll line up at quarterback. I'll play center, whatever. And yesterday he took handoffs from quarterbacks. And Jim Bob Cooter was asked after about just Tyler Warren and his versatility. Is it normal for a rookie tight end to be able to kind of take on as much as he has in terms of, you know, obviously playing tight end, but also being able to line up at other spots?
It is a little more unusual. The tight end position is pretty mentally taxing. We ask a lot of our tight ends. Tyler is uniquely talented to handle a lot of that. Now, we're putting a lot on his plate. And sometimes you push them a little bit beyond their threshold to try to ask a little bit more and more and more each day of them. He's done a really nice job studying his role each day, being able to go out there and execute. I think he's going to be a very versatile piece for us. We're going to try a bunch of different stuff with him, give him a bunch of shots at a bunch of different aspects of playing offensive football. I think he's going to do a bunch of it really, really well. But it's a learning stretch right now. Nice hot training camp day in pads. You know, you make a few mistakes along the way. We clean them up and we go. We're excited about his future.
Jim Bob Cooter right there, fired up for Tyler Warren, excited about his future, which is good. I'm glad that they're excited about his future. If they were dreading his future, then that would make me very, very concerned about how camp is going for him. But by all accounts, it seems like Tyler Warren is having a pretty good camp, and I think people are correct in expecting him to show up and be pretty impactful from the jump. He's going to be the best tight end the Colts have had in a while. He doesn't even have to be great for that to be true. Can he block and kind of catch the football? The answer to both those questions is yes. Then best tight end the Colts have had since Jack Doyle, right? So as I said before the audio, he took handoffs yesterday from quarterbacks, and I just love the willingness, I think, of players being willing to do multiple things and having the brain capacity to not only know how to play tight end, but also to know that, like, hey, like I need to line up here in this formation, and they're going to give me the ball on this sweep, and and on this play, like they're going to fake the sweep, and I'm going to go throw a kick out block or whatever it is. So I love the versatility. I love that the Colts are going to look to get him the football in multiple ways because that was one of his strengths when he was over at Penn State. Because like I said, they played that dude everywhere: receiver, running back, quarterback. My favorite play he made all year, they lined him up at center. So like he was lined up in like the tight end spot, but he played center because he snapped the football to Drew Aller and he just ran a go. And Drew Aller was like, cool. And he threw up a prayer. And Tyler Warren's Tyler Warren. So he jumped over a safety and caught it for a touchdown. Just an incredible play. And I just love that the Colts drafted someone who can impact the offense in multiple ways. So that's a really, really good thing that I am looking forward to seeing from him this season. And he's going to play a big role in this Colts offense because I just don't think that the Colts have a ton of big-time playmakers. Like they've got good players. You know, Michael Pittman Jr. is a good wide receiver, and Josh Downs is a good wide receiver, and Adonai Mitchell has a lot of talent, but didn't really show it on the field last year. And there's just a lot of good in terms of the playmakers for the Colts that are pass catchers. Tyler Warren has a chance to be a guy who is great. A guy who on 3rd and 8, like I'm looking for that guy. Like when you watch the Rams play and it's 3rd and 8, like you knew in the year that they won the Super Bowl that on 3rd and 8, they were throwing the football to Cooper Kupp. When you watch the Chiefs play and it's 3rd and 7 and they got to have it, you know that they're throwing the football to Travis Kelce. Like you know it in your guts. And the Colts don't really have a guy like that. Like on 3rd and 7, gotta have it. I'm not sitting at home like, yeah, they're absolutely gonna throw the football to Michael Pittman Jr. here. Like that is not a thought that I have. And the hope is that Tyler Warren can be that guy. 3rd and 8, time to be great. We need a first down. There's 1 minute and 47 seconds left. We're trying to march the ball down the field to score so we can win. And we got to pick up this first down here. Who are we going to? Hopefully, probably not this year because he's a rookie, but hopefully at some point down the line, the answer to that question is Tyler Warren. We got to find that dude whenever we need a big play. So the fact that they're going to look to get him the ball in multiple ways, I think is a good sign that he could eventually reach that point at some point in his NFL career. And the only way we're going to find out about that is if Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones figure out how to play the quarterback position in some way, shape, or form. And, I really hope that they do. I do. I want for either one of them, Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, to really figure it out. I think whoever wins the job, I think is going to draw the attention of the NFL. And if it's Anthony Richardson, then people are going to be asking the question, is this the year that everything comes together and he finally figures it out? And if it's Daniel Jones, then the question is going to be, can he have a Sam Darnold-like year where he turns his career around? Which translation for that is neither one of these guys have ever been good. So we'll see if either one of them can turn it around. And if they can, the Colts are going to have a chance to win this division, because that is really, because there's a lot of good and okay on this roster. There's not a lot of great. I'm going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow. But there's a lot of good. There's a lot of solid. There's a lot of I don't mind that guy. And in this division that has a lot of that, except for the Texans, I really like the Texans in the roster. The issue with them is they have an entirely new offensive line. 4 of the 5 starters on the Texans offensive line this year didn't play last year. 3 of them weren't even on the team. And so that's kind of the concern with them. And if your offensive line isn't good, you are immediately vulnerable. Immediately. And the Colts offensive line seems like it's going to be all right. Bernard Raymond at left tackle, Quentin Nelson at left guard. Tanner Bortolini had good stretches last year. I still felt like the more he played, the worse he got. Gonsalves, we'll see. They drafted him to play tackle. They're going to have him play guard. We'll see how that goes. And then at right tackle, obviously it's Braden Smith. And if he can stay healthy, then that Braden Smith's a good player. You know that. So that is the one thing that could potentially propel the Colts over a team like Houston, right? If the Houston offensive line is bad, and if Anthony Richardson / Daniel Jones if one of them is the starting quarterback and they figure it out a little bit, then maybe, just maybe, the Colts could win this division. That is as glass half full as you could ever get when it comes to this team. But if it's more of the same, if it's more of bad Anthony Richardson and it's more of bad Daniel Jones, then, chalk this team up for 6 wins. Anyway, the Fever, I do want to touch on them really quickly because they play tonight against the 3rd-seeded Phoenix Mercury. If the playoffs started today, the Fever would be in as the 6th seed and the Mercury would be in as the 3 seed. And the Fever still have the 4th best odds to win the WNBA Finals. And I Vegas is way smarter than I am. They're 5-2 in their last 7 games, the Fever. And like that's good. No, they've, Caitlin Clark only played in 3 of those 7 games. She's still out. People don't really know when she's going to come back, but like the Fever have other good players. Like Kelsey Mitchell's having a pretty good year. Aaliyah Boston's a pretty good player. I know that the role players haven't been as good as what we thought they'd be. Like Sophie Cunningham's been okay. Lexi Hull's been all right. Like that's really it. And so if Caitlin Clark can come back at some point and Kelsey Mitchell and Lee Boston can just kind of keep the Fever afloat, then like the Fever could go on a run in these playoffs. Obviously, Caitlin Clark would have to come back and be her normal self and make threes and make her teammates better like she does. Once again, we still don't really know when she's going to come back, but I just keep your eye on them. Like, with Caitlin Clark being out, we've kind of cooled off on the WNBA coverage a little bit, but with that being said, if she comes back and she keeps playing well, then she comes back and she starts playing well, then this Fever team could make a run. Like there's a reason why Vegas has them with the 4th best odds to win the WNBA Finals. Okay, there's a reason for that. So we'll see. They play tonight at home. If you don't have anything going on, go watch them play. You'll have a good time because going to games is always fun. I love going to games. I miss, going to Pacer games and those things because those were a lot of fun. So if you have the time tonight, go watch the Fever. They will not disappoint you. And yeah, go have a good time. That's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune in and, watch or listen. I greatly appreciate it. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Going to talk more about the Colts and this roster that I don't think is very good. So I'm going to do that tomorrow. The Nate Ockett Show comes your way next. We got Buck Showalter at 1 o'clock. And then at 2:30, Tom Luganbill is going to join the show to talk a little bit of college football. So the Dan Ockett Show, it's loaded. It's going to be a really good show today. You don't want to miss it. You can listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. I am done. I will talk to you tomorrow starting at 10 a.m. Peace.